One of the great crises of our generation is the notion of ibadat being burdensome. So for example, the recitation of the Quran is a worship of Allah, it's rewarding. But the current generation, if they recite Quran for, the concept of reciting Quran for an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours or 7 or 8 hours it seems retarded. If you think, I don't think there's maybe even 1% of the Muslim population in Canada that reads Quran for maybe an hour or 2 hours a day. You know, it's non-existent. This is the generation we have. This is a crisis on our ummah, and I'll tell us why. What happens is, if you see the trajectory of what happens, so this generation sees ibadat, worship of Allah, as a burden. What happens to the next generation? They see it as an honor and they do it more? Anybody? No. The Prophet ﷺ made it very clear. As my ummah progresses, the generation that follows the first is going to be worse and worse. This is a hadith, an authentic hadith. So if it's burdensome now, do we assume that the next generation will take it on as an honor and a responsibility? No. They grow further away from that burden. So why is it that this is the case? Why? Why is it that, I'm just giving one example, there's many. I'm using the example of the recitation of the Quran. And wallahu alam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my analysis. We've become so mentally liberalized that we have left our ways. And I'll give us an example. In Muslim countries, when children grow up, by default, they are forced to learn Quran. By default, they are forced to recite Quran. Here, the mindset is very liberal. So it's like, we can't force the kids. Let them do what they want. Take it easy. So we don't force the children into learning the Quran like in Muslim civilizations they do. So consequently, the harms of this is that as the children grow up, they grow up in a civilization in which where these things are now not habits, they're burdensome. Because anything you do, if you don't do it, it's burdensome. So for example, right now, if you tell me to run a marathon, or not even a marathon, if you tell me to run from here to the Water Street here, it's like a marathon. I cannot do it. I don't want to do it. Why? Because I'm not habitual of that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to embarrass myself running halfway and be out of breath and everybody's looking, what the heck is wrong with this guy? So it's burdensome, we stay away from it. Even though it's a simple task. Tell one of the kids, run from here to Water Street. In a jiff, they're gone and they're back. So what happens is, if you see people, athletes, you see someone playing basketball, they're playing at a certain level, high school level, university level, and the national or international level, or the Olympic level. They're playing a sport. They're so habitual. It's a habit. They enjoy that. Can me and you do it at that level? No, it's a burden. It's a burden, correct? Now, those people who are doing that, who are doing whatever they're good at, if it's basketball, if it's work, if it's marathon, they have been doing it and being forced to do it from a very tender age, which is why they're so good at it. It's become their habit. They don't feel it as a burden. They can run a marathon, it's no problem, even though it is a burden. Is running a marathon easy? It's a burden, but they can run marathon after marathon after marathon simply because it's habit. They've trained for it. This is what they were forced to do. So they actually enjoy that. Why the same mentality when it comes to ibadat, you become liberal? No, don't force them. Let them do what they want. So you see the harms here. It's becoming, the trajectory is leading towards kufr actually. So, for example, let's say, how can we force this liberalized mentality? You can't force the kids. You cannot force the kids to recite Quran. And you can force your 3-year-old child out of your home, out of the mother's lap? You're telling me, a liberalized society is telling me that I cannot force my children to recite Quran. But the same society is telling me the child is only 2 years of age, but dump them in a daycare and go to work. The same society. The same society that's telling you that the same liberalized society mentality is telling you, you cannot force your kids to read Salah. How dare you? That same liberalized society is forcing you and telling you, you have to take your children at the age of 4 to junior kindergarten. Sit in the classroom like a machine, even though these are the days for fitrah, to enjoy play. To have a blast with your family, with your cousins, with your friends, and just play and have no concern in the world. But it's a liberalized, industrialized system that is forcing us to do that. But when it comes to faith, we don't see that. But when it comes to the rest of the things, it absolutely doesn't matter. We're okay with it. You can force us to do whatever you want. We'll do it. So, my advice to myself is force your children. From a tender age, just like you force them out of your house, just like you force them to watch the screen and television, just like you force them to go to school, force them to recite the Quran. Force them to offer the Salah. And when I say force, I don't mean grab the asa, no, I don't mean the asa, the stick, you beat them up. No. The Prophet ﷺ never beat anybody up. What is a force? What force? What am I talking about? The force is of your time, of your wisdom, of your strength and energy and your hard work. Use your love as a force to tell them, recite the Quran. Offer the Salah. Use that as a force. Why does the force have to be a negative force? Do you, in the morning when you take your kids to school, do you beat the life out of them and kick them out of your house, go to school? No. But there are forces in play. You're waking up early. You're buying new backpacks. You're buying these fancy books. You're buying a new clothes for the first day of school. Now you're having a graduation for junior kindergarten. There's a graduation for senior kindergarten. All of these are forces. But when it comes to your Quran, there's absolutely no force. The child is learning the qawaid and they're struggling because they have no support from anybody. The system doesn't support them. Parents don't support them. It's like a burden. And the parents are feeling it as a burden to teach it to their kids too. So now they're reflecting that burden into their practical life too. So this is with all of the a'mal. This is with all of the a'mal. So don't have a double standard when it comes to forcing your children. We're already abusing them by kicking them out of the house at 2 years of age, or 3 years of age, or 4 years of age. It's abuse. I believe it's 110% abuse to kick your child out of your house, send them to the daycare, or even send them to kindergarten at 4 years of age. The Prophet, even Salah, but the Prophet says, don't even tell them to pray, man, don't let them play. The Prophet taught us, don't even tell the child to pray before 7 years of age. Yeah, if they do it themselves by seeing you pray, well and good. But do not force them to pray. Don't say a word about prayer. Let them enjoy, let them play. But when it comes to, Islam is actually lenient. Far more lenient. Yes, we have our rules. We have set rules and regulations and guidelines. It's not a liberal mindset. Everything, it's a free world. Do whatever you want. No. That's not the way. But there is serious leniency. Salah, we're not even supposed to talk about it before the age of 7. So, people nowadays, many people are asking, is it halal to listen to music? Many people, they ask him, is it halal to listen to music? Halal. F this, be this. It's this halal to listen to this music? No, I just don't understand. What music do you find appropriate? I don't know. I don't think there's such a thing. Allahu A'lam, I'm not sure. I'm not listening to music. But what's the void? If you see, Nowadays, the youth, they have these white things inside their ears here. And they don't even go, they had the wire before when we had them. Now they don't even have a wire. They just stick right here like a little thing, and they hang like, hearing aids. The older people wear hearing aids, and the younger people are preparing for hearing aids. That's what it is. Because when you put this in your ear constantly, boom, 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 you're listening to this, eventually you're going to need hearing aids. That's the way it is, man. So we're able to listen to hours and hours of the beats and the music and memorize these nasty lyrics of these raps or songs or whatever. We're able to get that. But when it comes to the Quran, there's no halawa, no sweetness. Because this is not something that you were forced to do. Like I said, the forces don't have to be negative. They need to be positive forces. So now, these things become our destiny. If I'm living my life listening to music constantly, this becomes my habit. Habits become your destiny. That's how you die. It's just the way it is. Similarly, if you're habitual of reciting Quran, listening to Quran, and you enjoy it, this is your habit, this is your destiny. And that's what we want. But we need those forces working towards that. By Allah, we need those forces. And I'm going to end with one hadith. One of the Sahaba, I think Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, if I'm incorrect, someone you can correct me, inshallah. He came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ became aware he was reciting the Quran every night. He was reciting the Quran every night. Now, how long does it take to recite the Quran every night? Even if you're doing supersonic speed, like you're trying to go as fast as possible, it takes about 7 to 8 hours. So he's spending he's reciting the Quran, he's spending the whole night practically reciting the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ, when he became aware of this, he told him, the Prophet ﷺ said, don't do that. So he responded by saying, okay, I'll do it every other night. And the Prophet ﷺ said, don't do it every other night either, that's still too much. He said every 3 nights, 4 nights, 5 nights, 6 nights, fi sab'in. And when he came to the 7th, the Prophet ﷺ said, even 7 nights don't do it. Don't even finish the Quran in 7 nights, take longer. And he narrates, he said, if I continue to ask, the Prophet ﷺ would have extended the duration. So there is an ease on our ummah. But how close are we to even the 7 days? Reciting Quran in 7 days. How much Quran do we recite even in the year? There's no halawah, there's no enjoyment anymore. Because it's not a habit. How do you enjoy it? How do you enjoy the marathon if you've not trained for the marathon? If there was no forces working towards that marathon, you will never be able to run that marathon. Never. 0, zip. You'll never be able to do that Quran. The second thing is, many of us, we even struggle to read Quran. Many of us, we struggle, we make mistakes. There's reward in the struggle. The Prophet ﷺ said someone who recites Quran in pursuit of perfection, they're trying their best to make it better, Allah gives them reward on a mistake. But what I'm trying to say is something different here. Someone who does not know how to read the Quran properly, let's take the example of someone who's trying to run a marathon, but their form is correct. They're running backwards. It's going to be a burden. They will not enjoy it because the formation is incorrect. You're not working towards it. You're working against yourself. Similarly, if your Quran is not 100% and so when you go and try to recite it, what happens? You're trying to run a marathon, but you're actually running backwards. You understand what I'm saying? So first perfect that recitation. And it doesn't happen overnight. For some of us, mashallah, we speak Arabic. It's easy. And for some of us, it might be a little bit more difficult. But you're rewarded according to your difficulty. According to how difficult it is for you. It's more difficult, you get more reward. So perfect that recitation and then recite it. And Allah is my witness, once you start to feel the sweetness of the Quran, you don't want to hear anybody or anything else but the Quran. And that'll hopefully become your destiny. This is the mission. This is working against the tide. Like I said, the trajectory is going towards a burden and then kufr. The current generation, the way it is, nobody recites Quran for an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, or 10 hours. Nobody. So the trajectory is going there. But I'm talking about how we can work against that tide. Do we have anybody have any questions pertaining to this? Pretty straightforward, I think, subhanAllah. Pretty straightforward. Learn the Quran, get your form right, work hard, figure it out, and just recite it. Make it your habit, it'll become your destiny. Otherwise, by Allah, everything else doesn't matter. I've seen people here in this masjid who are elderly. They don't know how to read Quran. And what they do, they grab the Quran and they just go like this and stare at it. Simply because they don't know how to read it. But that realization will sink in. Allah gives you age till 60, 70, now you're retired and nothing to do. This is what's gonna end up happening. You're gonna realize this is the real deal here. And then you're just gonna stare at it, not knowing what anything is. Because you can't do anything else, you're too old. And it's too late now. Even though it shouldn't be, but that's just the way life is, subhanAllah, generally speaking. So put in the work, get your form right, and force your children. And I don't mean negative forces. I don't mean beat them up or curse at them or like that. Use positive forces. Don't get into this dumb, liberalized ideology that no. You can force them out of the house to go to school, give them some kafir for 8 hours a day, but you cannot force them to recite Quran? Really? Really? How does that even make any sense? No? It's troublesome. It's bothersome, really. Anyway, we ask of Allah for help. We ask of Allah protects our progenies, allows us to work against the tide, work very hard so that the imans of our progenies are protected. When we were children, we recited Quran for about 10 hours a day for years on end. How many hours a day? 10 hours a day for years on end. And we were forced to do it. We were forced to do it. But alhamdulillah, I'm not crediting myself. We credit our teachers, our parents, our elders. But subhanallah, every second of it, it's enjoyable. Really. You're driving the car, you're reciting the Quran. Maybe you get into a crash and die, who knows? Imagine you're listening to music. You're traveling in an airplane, imagine you're just reciting the Quran. What if you crash and die? You're going somewhere, anywhere, just recite the Quran. Because there's nothing better. This is our aqidah. This is our belief. There's nothing better than the Quran. If you think something is better than the Quran, you got issues with your belief system. With your aqidah in itself. So there's nothing better than this. But sadly, it's become a burden. May Allah help us. Jazakumullah.